So, hi, everybody. I'm sorry for any of the difficulties that some people might have had getting on. I'm going to talk a little bit, first introduce myself and talk a little bit about the Mercury Retrograde. And after I, teach you guys a few things, I'm going to lead us into a little meditation. You can have a chance to maybe jot down a few things, and then we'll hopefully have a little bit of time for people to share at the end, if we do. But there'll still be people can ask questions on the page on Facebook too, and I can try and answer them if we don't have enough time to answer all the questions. So one of the reasons, my name is Kathy Izzo. I have worked with astrology. I'm 56. I just turned 56, and I've been working with astrology since, I think I was like 23 or 24. And it's one of those things, it's like a language. Some of you speak more than one language. Like the minute I had a chart done, I was really curious, and it was just one of those things. I picked it up so easily. It really makes sense to me. I don't work with it as actively as I used to because I've taken my healing and intuitive counseling practice to an even deeper intuitive level, where sometimes I use tarot, sometimes I use astrology. I always use them as resources, but I just work directly with individuals and speak with their guides, work with my guides, but that process has come from many years of paying attention to exactly what we're going to be paying attention here tonight. Mercury Retrograde, I love teaching this to a group of women because we already, so many of us throughout a long period of time, but for many of you who might be a little bit younger, just recently the whole reclaiming your moon and like the red tent and people who have just had babies, that kind of interior reality is really shadow space is what it is. And Mercury Retrograde is also shadow space. And, shadow, I'm going to be talking a bit about shadow because there actually is a period even within Mercury Retrograde that's called the shadow phase. But the idea of shadow is it's a very, very rich time and rich part of ourselves, the shadow. And because we're raised, especially in a lot of Western families, when there's something wrong from birth, when there's something wrong when we're little, when we're upset about something, when something is hard to figure out, when something's not clear, when there's some kind of secret, and it's like there's a lot of anxiety and discomfort that is felt by children in that state. And this is really good for you moms to think about. I mean, you're probably already thinking about this, but, everything is always an opportunity. There's always something to be learned, even when it's something very, very difficult. And when it's something that is really out of our control, like an eclipse, which is coming up on Saturday, which kind of causes a lot of havoc, or something Mercury retrograde, things that have a reputation for things going out of control, that's really just our Western belief system that is always trying to fix things, have things in the light, have things understandable, have things very clear. We also have this tendency to want to know about things ahead of time. And the thing about Mercury retrograde is there's absolutely no way you can understand about what the reasons for the Mercury retrograde, the parts of your life that are affected by Mercury retrograde. You really don't know until afterwards. So it's the ultimate out of control feeling. Things are not going the way they usually go. I'm going to explain exactly what the retrograde means in physical terms, and it will make a lot of sense to you. We're basically going over a certain period in the zodiac 3 times. That's what the retrograde is. So I'm going to explain how that works so that it makes sense to you. But so if you can just imagine why, with all of the beautiful entities, source powers, God, goddess, all that is, why would they set up this period where we go over something 3 times? It has to be for a reason, and it has to be powerful. So I'm going to explain that in a second, but I just want to tell, like another thing is like that fits in there is like if any of you are left-handed, that's another thing that has had a bad rap and yet so mysterious, so interesting, a whole different way of mind working. Before I get into the Mercury retrograde, the reason I was asking people, the few people that I was able to do it for about like where their Mercury is, first of all, I was looking to see if anybody had Mercury retrograde because I have that in my chart, and I think that's why, I haven't always loved it, but as soon as I really started to understand about astrology, I realized that I had that special relationship that really needed to look at things kind of from the inside out. And I think that's why I'm such a good healer. And it's not that common, but, there are people, but none of the people I checked had Mercury retrograde. It doesn't, it's like being left-handed. It doesn't really, everybody has something special about their Mercury. That's the amazing thing about our charts is that we have 9 planets plus various asteroids, and they're all different for each person. Even people who are twins, their charts are slightly different. And that's partly what I wanted to get you guys to realize today was that this time of going deeper with Mercury retrograde and kind of looking for messages, really paying attention, spending as much time as you can in your busy lives to have quiet time where you tune in. We'll do some of that tuning in the meditation where you can tune in and kind of let things bubble up and come to you without seeking them. That's a very Mercury retrograde activity. But, the thing is, like, in your charts, and, I might be able to do a series of things, here and there where we talk about other parts of astrology, but, Mercury is our mind. That's why there's so much confusion with Mercury retrograde and so much fear because people feel like they're losing their mind, that they can't communicate the way they usually do, or things are not as clear as they usually are. But the fact is, even if you don't have your Mercury retrograde, Mercury is really happy in an air sign. Some of us have I know Laura has hers in Gemini. There's some places where Mercury's the happiest, but 9 out of 10 people do not have that placement. So, it's like an optimally running machine of Mercury would have like no negativity in the chart connecting to, there's no planets crossing it in any way. It's in the perfect placement. Most people don't have that. So, what you might want to look at is your relationship to things going, like communication with other people, or your relationship with things like a really organized structure. Like, you may not have a good relationship with that to begin with. So this is like, with Mercury retrograde, it's a time for a lot of people, whether they have Mercury retrograde in their chart or not. Like, if you have Mercury in a water sign, those people are so intuitive. So they don't really work with like a really clear Mercury. They have like a much more intuitive way of working with their Mercury. So, so this is a time when you can like, by slowing down and seeing in this period where this planet that rules the mind and communication is going over one spot 3 times, like really examine where the places are where you feel like things are the easiest for you to understand or learn. It's not just about communication, it's also about learning. There might be some surprises for you. So that's just the introduction. Let me just explain to you about the shadow period for Mercury, because we all know, if we're on Facebook, that, or you might know that Mercury is actually retrograde from the 4th of October, a couple of days ago, until the 25th. The shadow period is actually from September 14th to November 10th. It's a really long time. So what that means is you're driving on a road, you're going somewhere, you know exactly where you're going. It's like maybe 10 miles down the road. You're driving there, and you get to a certain point in the road, going forward, everything's going smoothly, and you realize you forgot something at home. So you turn your car around, and you go back home. That's the retrograde period. But you're going back over that same 10 miles that you just drove directly. So that's what happens. So from September 14th, you can look at this when you go back. I'm going to put these dates on the page. So this period that you've been driving straight from September 14th to the 4th, everything going along as usual, but you're setting the map or the imprint for your retrograde. So already there are things that your psyche is investigating. Then you get to that point where you forgot something. That's the Mercury retrograde time, and you go all the way back. So you're going back over that same path, but you're going backwards. And for some people, that might be where they figure everything out. For some people, that might be where it's totally, confusing, but there is so much richness there. Then you get all the way back home. That's the end of the Mercury retrograde period. But before you're really moving on, you have to go all the way back that same 10 miles. So you're going over the same stretch of road 3 times. So that's why when I first saw on the page people complaining about Mercury retrograde, I said it's a really rich time, and it's also the shadow period, and why I wanted to teach this, because that's a very big opportunity that this planet that rules the way we think will go over one piece of astrology 3 times. So this period, again, this is all, and I hope that I'm trying to be as clear as possible. I'm going to stop in a minute for questions. But, this period, no matter what your chart is going back and forth between Libra and Scorpio. So particularly, and there's a lot of planets, we have the eclipse tomorrow. There's a lot of planets that are affected there. So it's a time that not only are we all going back 3 times, the whole world is going back 3 times. The whole world is kind of in this, really learning something deep, whether it feels good, whether it feels challenging, whether it feels, I personally feel, although I feel like I've really slowed down a lot, it slows things down, obviously. I feel like a lot of potential for me. I'm a Libra. But that even if, you don't have anything that you know of in those signs, just what they both mean is Libra is about relationships. It's particularly about partnerships, love partnerships, business partnerships. It's about the one-to-one relationship. It's also about beauty and symmetry. And then Scorpio, as far as the one-to-one relationship, is taking that relationship deeper, is sexual intimacy. It's also power structures, if you feel like it's an even power play between you and your partner or any partners that you might have, or even a close girlfriend. It's like how, and those power plays don't have to be negative. It's how we learn about ourselves. If we're envious of someone, or there's something in a relationship where we feel like it's out of balance. And so the Libra is kind of where we find each other as a mirror, and then Scorpio is where we really refine it and get real. And I would say just generally, if we're going to look at not looking at the world, but partnership and best friends and partners that we work with closely at work, there's oftentimes some kind of competition there. Even if it's just competition time-wise, say you're in a family situation, who has more time alone, who works more, who has more freedom, those kind of things come up in the Scorpio. So that threshold, even if you weren't looking at anything in your personal charts, that's the piece of road we're going over right now. So I know that's a lot of information so far, but it's the clearest I can be right now as far as the overview of why Mercury is important, Mercury retrograde is important, and what we can learn from it. And so before I go any further, I just want to see if anybody has any specific questions or wants me to go over any of that. How are you guys doing out there?
Oh, man,
excellent.
I'm super
Excellent.
Hey, Kathy, I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
So, in my trying to understand this, when you're saying that Mercury, you're making the metaphor, of course, that Mercury is going back and forth over the same astrology, I guess, repeatedly,
right.
but what does that mean specifically? So, like, it's going over different constellations, or I don't understand.
Okay, so let me get down. So thank you for asking it. So just to get simpler. Okay, so in astrology, we have the planets. Mercury is a planet. The signs are how the sky is broken down. So if you had a map, just like you have a map and you have all the different states in the United States, and then you might have a car that's driving through these states. The planet is the car. The signs are the states. So when I talk about the road, so Mercury is moving through. So if you ever saw someone's astrological chart or any astrological chart, it's a circle that's divided into 12 parts. So if we're just making a generalization, it's more complicated than that, but each of those sections, it's like a pie, there's 12 even sections. Those sections are the signs. So Mercury is driving through the end of Libra into the beginning of Scorpio, and then it's turning around and going back into Libra and then going back into Scorpio. Does that make sense to everybody?
But is this just for, like, this time, like, I guess, like, Mercury, it goes through all the signs at some point?
Right, exactly. So we all have, so in your chart, your picture of your chart, that's a picture of the night sky the moment you were born. Okay. So that's why, so if I tell you you have Mercury in Gemini or you have Mercury in Cancer, if you have Mercury in Pisces, that was where Mercury was the moment you were born. So this is the thing about astrology, which I'm really happy to break it down this simply so that you guys can get it. So please ask me more questions. But the planets continue to move. They're moving every day. Some of the planets move very, very slowly. Planets like Pluto and Neptune and Uranus, they only move through a couple of signs in our whole lifetime. If even that many. Pluto might only move like a sign and a half. So it doesn't move that much. But Mercury, because it's close to the sun, it goes around, like every year. And Mars and Venus go around like every 2 years. So they move through all the signs. So that's for all of us on the planet. We still have our birth chart, which is the picture. It's like a photograph of the sky the moment you were born. So when I'm talking about where Mercury is right now, that affects us. If your birthday isn't, or if your sun or other planets, I can't do everybody's charts. But I'm going to give you a link where you can get the picture. It may not mean that much to you, but it's the beginning because you can start to look things up. So I'm going to give you that. They're free charts. But even if you have no planets there, because it's Mercury retrograde and it's going over 3 times, that will affect you. If you have a planet there, if you have your sun there, like your birthday is around that time, it will really affect you, but it will affect you. That's why Mercury retrograde is so powerful. Even people who have nothing connected to that part of the sky is feeling it because it's going over it 3 times. So I'm not going to talk, I don't want to confuse people about Venus, but Venus also has a very complicated cycle, and she's doing some fancy movements right now also, going over a period of the sky many times, but it's not as, it's much longer, and, there's time to hear about it, Venus going retrograde also. So those closer planets, when they go back and forth, we really feel it. The bigger planets, we feel it, but they're moving so slowly. So it takes years sometimes for them to make one of these trips down the road back and forth. So hopefully, So I'm really happy to stay here until people really get what I mean, so they understand the difference between their birth chart and what's happening for everybody on the planet, like tonight. So, anybody else that has a question about that?
Can you hear me? This is Ivy.
Just a little louder, Ivy.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So can you was that I get how...
Now I can't hear you again. Can you be loud?
Oh. Okay, so I understand what you mean as far as the planets and the signs, but what does that mean realistically to us as human beings, and how we're saying that we have to relive some challenges that we faced while Mercury was originally in Libra and is going back in?
Oh, I mean, that could possibly be, but we're not even going to go there because it's pretty complicated. What I'm saying is to just look like, really, the world is so complicated right now. Astrology is so complicated right now. I think knowing the amount of astrology that I just taught you, the best, that's why I wanted to talk. I'm going to talk about the moon in a second. That might be a little bit easier. But so the thing is that it's just to like slow down, just like you would in your moon time, to slow down and to just pay attention to your dreams, have some intuitive time, and really take notes. So I gave you the dates, even though September 14th was a while away, like take time afterwards. This is how you build these wise woman ways, is to pay attention. And then after it's over on November 10th, look at those dates of like when you were going back and forth over this period. And I can almost guarantee you that you had something going on that was repetitive in your more intimate one-to-one relationships, either partnership or, like I said, someone you work with every day or someone that you're really like best friends with. There was some kind of learning going on there. The word challenges, I'm still co-opting the Western way of looking at these things. It's really opportunities, and it may not be challenges. That's the thing, like challenges, the word shadow. We have very specific emotional responses to these words. But a challenge, if you think of yourself as like an athlete, for an example, a challenge is something very positive because you're able to really live beyond maybe the potential you think you have. And I see Mercury retrograde as that. It's a time when we get like our more, intellectual resources, our conscious mind gets a little bit disabled. But that's a good thing because most of the time we are running so hard trying to figure everything out and trying to get ahead of things and trying to fix everything. So if we honor the Mercury retrograde and kind of see how things reveal itself, and then in hindsight kind of go back and look at that, I think you can really learn something about how your mind works and also what is the opportunity right now. Because we might be trying so hard to make something happen in our private lives, and it's really not what's on the table. But it's because we want to make that thing happen. And that's the kind of thing that's going to get screwed up with a Mercury retrograde, a place where you have a lot of expectations, a place where you're really holding on to thinking you're right. That's the place that's really going to get turned around in a Mercury retrograde. So we see it as bad luck, but it's really a place that's it's like forcing us to slow down and reevaluate and kind of get to a deeper truth. So does that make sense?
It is so funny you say that. I remember the last Mercury retrograde or two of them ago or something. I was in such a hurry to get to the bank and get my check cashed before 5 o'clock, and it was like a really big deal. And, I rear-ended somebody like right there, like boom, right at a stoplight. And I was like, but it's like I was like trying so hard to force that, and it was just like, whoa, slow down.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good example. Well, I mean, oftentimes I think in astrology, being an astrologer for as long as I've been, a lot of times when we are not letting what organically wants to happen, then the outside world interferes. So, that's kind of like a common belief. It's sort of an old-fashioned fortune-telling kind of thing, but like if you're having a slew of bad luck, things like injuries, accidents, losing things, it's usually because you're so far ahead of yourself that the world has to intrude, to ground you. I'm actually staying with a friend of mine who has this major court case happening. It's a really complicated, unfortunate situation with an ex of hers. And I have to tell you, she seems more emotionally healthy than I've ever seen her because she just had to just let a bunch of stuff go to deal with the situation. And I got here expecting to see her like completely a mess, and she's so clear because she was on this trajectory of trying to prove how wrong her ex was, and like they got themselves in a really bad situation. And now, it's like there's a lot of humility in Mercury retrograde, and that's a really good thing. And and it's like when I say like not to get attached to meanings, I really want that's something that's really important in my meditation practice, and I think it's really helpful here, is to give equal value to light and dark, give equal value to good and bad, like to not always like be judging, like this is a great thing, this is the best thing that ever happened, this is the worst thing that ever happened. I mean, we can start to just, it's like that whole idea of detachment, and detachment's really important in Mercury retrograde, so that you can like just see things clearly, because you just get yourself, if you keep pushing your own agenda, what you think should be happening, you're going to get yourself tied up in knots, and it's going to be kind of hard to get out of those, and then you're going to see the whole thing as a negative situation. So anybody else that wanted to say anything about any of that?
Hi, yes, this is Monse.
Oh, hey, Monse.
Hi. So I have first just a quick comment on the Scorpio and Mercury retrograde, and then a question about all of this. So my mom is a Scorpio, and this whole time she's had like a lot of problems in her life, either with personal relationships or just in general, money and everything else. But specifically throughout this whole period of Mercury retrograde, she just like suddenly opened her eyes to it, that this whole process she's been going through for years, and has like totally done like a 360 kind of, movement on her life, where like she just like realized and is determined to like change it, and she's just kind of like acknowledging so many things, like even from way long ago. And it's just amazing. To me, it's just amazing. Like, I've never seen something like this happen with her before. It's totally, like, groundbreaking work for her. Right. And I see it from the outside. So that's just, like, an amazing thing, how, like, the Mercury retrograde, for her, it's actually working, like, in a really amazing way. But for me, it's more like it's not really helping. Like, the reason why I got so interested in this talk is because especially with like personal relationships, like really close people to me, I've had like a lot of miscommunication, and I've noticed that things around me have been, very different and weird lately. Like, I've come across confrontations, like people on the street having confrontations, or people being confrontational with me for no really specific reason. So it's just kind of like, it's something that I'm not around often, and it doesn't happen often. And that's why I notice it to be so off. So I guess my question about this would be, like, how, in this specific period, how do you protect yourself from those situations? Mm-hmm. And even, like, in the personal relationships, like in your close relationships, how do you, like, mend things? Like, how do you, let's say, fix it? Like, how do you, turn things around, and just kind of, what kind of help can you get on your side, either from, I don't know, visualizations or crystals or whatever type of energy that could help us, like, to have on our side to kind of counter that and fix those situations and, like...
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's funny, people never believe this about me, and I know you guys are all into crystals. And not like I don't have crystals around me, but it's funny, like it's just the way I am. I just believe in the breath, and I believe in detachment and present moment awareness, which, it's like to get into this moment. I'm going to give you some real tools here, Monty, so just hear me out. But, my thing is to be exactly where my feet are, like to the point that I look down and, like, take a few deep breaths and, like, use all of my senses. I smell, I touch, I see, I hear. And this is something that I was taught by a really wise teacher of mine, is that the answer to every situation is in the present moment. So that if you get yourself in the present moment, not trying to understand the other person or even assume that you know something about them, not trying to fix the situation, but just really get into the present moment and get into your breath. And by getting into your breath, just deeper and slower than you would usually breathe, if you can breathe through your nose, and really feeling your feet on the ground. That's the first thing. So that's just a very simple exercise in being in the present moment. It's amazing how many things that I've healed with that, because oftentimes we are so if we are having our own difficult Mercury retrograde, and then the person on the street who we don't even know is having their own Mercury retrograde, so they're going over whatever in their life 3 times. We're going over whatever in our life. Our partner, our mother, your mother's having a positive time, you're having a hard time. Like, it's all so different. So how do we deal with that? I mean, this is a really good tool for every situation, is to be so, it's kind of corny, but that book, The 4 Agreements, this is how I raised, some of you know my daughters, and they're pretty amazing, and I really raised my kids with the 4 Agreements when they were teenagers. The 4 Agreements this may seem like a distraction from Mercury retrograde, but it's going to really help you guys. So the 4 Agreements are: always do your best, always tell the truth, don't make assumptions about other people's lives, and it's not all about you. I might be paraphrasing there. So what I mean by that is, if you get into the present moment inside yourself and you breathe, automatically those knots that are particularly bad during Mercury retrograde, because everybody's struggling, everybody's fighting, everybody's trying to control their universe, if you get into the present moment, first of all, the knots immediately loosen up. So you're using your breath, you're bringing that in. Then the thing is, do not engage with other people beyond the immediacy of the situation. Like, don't try to process for other people. Don't try to figure other people out. Like, if you keep bringing it back to the present moment, then if there's something that needs to be dealt with in the moment, you can have that conversation, really give the other person a place to express themselves, with the idea that they are also having a hard time. We're all doing the best we can. This might seem like an oversimplification, but this is how I deal with everything, and it's like made such a difference. I come from a totally hothead, screaming Italian family where no one listened to anybody else. Everybody was always upset all the time. So for me to get to the place where I am in my life, like, these are my main tools. They are particularly helpful for Mercury retrograde. I was not going to teach them tonight, but they are really helpful. So hopefully that made some sense. And if you know a lot about crystals, and you can use crystals for clearing energy, for, keeping, I'm very well practiced with my meditation, so I can really create a bubble around myself. But if you need the help of a crystal to kind of keep that buffer, then go and do that. And there are plenty of people in your group that can help you with that part. So was that helpful, Monse?
Yes, it was really helpful, and it makes a lot of sense related to, like, how these situations have been happening, because I have made the mistake of engaging when it wasn't, like, the right moment to maybe talk about something. And, I've been doing all of the opposite, which usually I would be a lot more, centered and would think about things more, and would do that, would get in the moment and just, like, take a different approach to things. But then lately it's just, things have been so, like, different in my life. Like, they've just flipped completely. I've flipped, like, in the way that I've approached situations, and then I've been, coming across situations that I usually I'm not around, that people that I usually don't have around, and like, behaviors that I usually don't have around. And, it caused me to just simply, react to it in a non-positive way. So,
well, there's something else that I think will help with that too, which is something that I learned from a 12-step program years ago, which is it's called HALT. It's also very helpful because I was going to say, you're probably really tired. You're a new mom, you're working, and so that's another thing when we get out of our center. See, this is really not what I was going to teach, but it's really the right thing for this. It's like, because if you're in your center, then you're also, I was going to talk more about increasing the intuition, but, this is the flip side, is how do you get So you need to be in your center to increase your intuition, but also you get pulled out of your center by other people's stuff, right? So this saying called HALT is hungry, angry, lonely, tired. HALT. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And it's like, do not get into a major conversation, particularly with your beloved, when you are feeling any of those things, because you're going to get thrown off. You're not centered. So, again, this is like, hey, this is Mercury retrograde. The class did not go in the direction I planned it, but this is really good stuff. It's like the reverse. Like I was going to, and there's plenty of information out there for meditations that help you build your intuition, that help you build that silence. But, actually, I think considering how much is going on right now, just being able to be gentle with yourself and hold your center is probably the best thing to learn during Mercury retrograde. And you'll figure the rest out afterwards. I still encourage you to take notes about your dreams and any things that comes up, and really have a daily journal. It'll be so interesting to go back and see, what was really going on, once you get to the middle of November. So anybody else have any questions? You guys okay out there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you know what I'm going to do, because I do need to go soon, is what I'm going to do now, unless anybody, so it's like if you have a question, think about it right now before I start. I think I'm going to close with the meditation. And the meditation is kind of about asking the divine for help and finding, getting out of your rational mind and kind of inviting in spiritual energy and basically asking for help, asking for guidance. Originally I was going to do this towards the beginning and we were going to talk afterwards, but I think what I'm going to do is lead you in, take you deep, and then I'm going to close the class and you guys can just write and take some notes down afterwards, and I'll put the recording up later tonight on the site. Is that good for everybody? Yeah?
That sounds awesome. I do have one question. I'm just curious. I came in late, so you may have already covered this, but, we always hear Mercury retrograde, be careful when you're making trip plans, or be careful about, detailed situation. How do you feel about that, the typical advice?
Right. As I kind of said in the beginning, I did say not about that exactly, but it's so on an individual basis, because it really depends on where Mercury is in your chart and where it is in your chart when you were born, where it is right now. That I would really make a safe call on that. I think to not make any plans is crazy. But what I would do is, if you are making, I'm not, the idea of there being some kind of accident or something, I think is really an old wives' tale. So that I wouldn't worry about. But if you were, say, driving, or you needed to get to the airport, I would just make time, not just for yourself, but for everybody else, because you may be making this effort to work more deeply with Mercury retrograde for yourself, but the people who are driving on the road may not be. So I would definitely take the time, shadow period included, but mostly the direct time, which is October 4th through October 25th, to just be again, it's just what I was talking about. Slow down, pay more attention, be in the present moment, don't get ahead of yourself. So that way you're paying attention to the people around you. So if somebody else isn't paying attention to you, you see them coming, So it's just and then you can get a lot of richness from that, from slowing down. It's not just, so you don't make it something that it's I'm slowing down because I'm afraid I'm going to get into a car accident. I'm slowing down because it's necessary. And I also think, this is something I was talking about with a friend earlier, just by paying attention to other people, you might learn something anyway. You might be seeing people on the street, in the subway, in the store. You might be picking up stuff just by slowing down, paying attention to be a little bit safer. You might also get some other riches from that. So the other thing about a trip is, if I was making a trip during Mercury retrograde myself, I would make room for some spontaneity and synchronicity and good stuff, because that's the kind of stuff that happens in Mercury retrograde too. So I wouldn't like over plan every minute of a trip, because there's going to be some surprises. So is that helpful?
Oh yeah, that was great. So basically just kind of live life like you normally do. It's nothing to be like frightened of. I feel like there's a lot of fear around Mercury retrograde.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm going to post the recording, and maybe you want to listen to the beginning of it, because I did talk about that a lot, of like how there's all this anxiety about terms like shadow. I said like Mercury retrograde is like being left-handed. It's like having your moon. It's like a foggy day. It's like, there's a lot of hidden things. That's not necessarily evil. That's just what we've learned. That's crazy. And fear breeds fear, and you got to be careful of your language. And, we make each other crazy. There's no reason for that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Awesome.
Okay, so listen, you guys, I love all of you. I'm going to lead you into this meditation, and I'm going to go sweat, but I am going to post the recording, and, I don't have a ton of time to answer questions, but I'll put up, like my email address, and, I'm always open to do sessions for people, but I can answer a few questions on the page, and, hopefully, I did want to talk about moon phases. It's one of my favorite things, so, the phase that you're born under and what that means for you. So at least that, I promise I will do that maybe in a month or something. So I'll set that up with Laura. Okay?
Sounds good.
So, yeah. Okay, so everybody get comfortable however you are. Some of you might have kids around and stuff, so, it's really only going to be like 5 minutes. But I want you to really feel your seat wherever you are, just like I was just talking about the present moment. So feel the parts of your body that actually are, even if they're in a chair or they're on the floor, but the parts of your body that are being called by gravity in towards the center of the earth. So gravity is that communication of the earth. She is holding us every day. If she wasn't there, we would never be able to rest. So just feeling that draw of the earth and breathing through your nose longer and deeper than you would normally. Just a little bit. You don't have to have a big agenda about the breath. You don't have to worry about if you're doing it. I'm spraying rose water, so maybe you'll feel that where you are. You don't have to do anything heroic or have a big agenda or worry if you're doing it right. Just a little bit slower and a little bit deeper than you would normally. Really feeling the connection to the earth, and then also straightening up your spine as best you can in the position you're in. Lengthening your neck, just tilting your chin in a little bit towards your chest, letting that crown chakra raise all the way up to the ceiling. And this is your present moment here. This is your body. This is your body. This is your vehicle on this planet. This is the way you can call in the spirits. You can call in the spirits the best by accepting yourself, your body, and your life exactly as it is right now. They love that. So any belief that you need to purify yourself in some way, that you need to be better, that you need to fix things, unclog stuff, if you can, in this very moment, believe that whatever is appearing for you right now is your medicine. Your medicine is what appears right now. Mercury retrograde, full moon, new moon, sad times, happy times, that is your medicine. And the spirits will love to show up for you when you cherish that moment that you're living right now. So continue to breathe through your nose. And as you're breathing through your nose, I want you to experience that breath, that amazing, gorgeous gift of your breath right now, as if it was the most interesting, gorgeous, complex substance you had ever taken into your body, better than any chocolate cake, more fascinating than any perfume, better than any kind of other kind of plant medicine that you might take. Just this breath, so gorgeous, so perfect. And feel how it enters your body and see in your mind's eye where it goes naturally of its own accord, because the breath is perfect and the breath is spirit and the breath knows where you need some extra love right now. So notice where the breath goes inside your body. And you can also notice sometimes we are so resistant to the places, to believing that there can be healing, that the breath wants to go somewhere and it kind of bounces off or it skips over. So see if you can get that slow that you notice that. And all these places in our bodies, this is what I want you, if you have time to write afterwards, these things you're noticing. Right now, I'm going to be silent for a moment before closing and use these tuning fork chimes that I have. And they have like an emotional and spiritual cleansing, like, Tibetan bowls. And so when I'm doing that, I want you to invite in, just really gently, like a little kid, any deity or any belief, creator, goddess, source, all that is, universe, higher power, however you communicate when you pray, whoever you feel, even if it's just a whisper and you don't know if you really believe, whoever you feel is watching your back, wherever you think you came from, the perfect thing that you are, I want you to ask in this moment while I play the chimes for what your medicine is. What is your medicine during this time of Mercury retrograde? What should you be paying attention to? It may be very abstract or gentle. Sometimes I see the information, it's almost like off the screen, like it's so far over to my right, I'll see something shimmering. And your intuition is like a deer. It's like a wild animal. You can't jump on it. You need to just keep that breath going. Let it come to you. Hold that still space, your center, and let those messages come to you. So keep breathing. I'm going to play the chimes, and then I'm going to close the call. And I really hope everybody has a gorgeous night. And I hope you get some insights and you get to hold your center, love your center, love your medicine, love your family, love those around you, love yourself.